18th century London. The streets reeked of alcohol, the aristocrats smiled falsely at arranged marriages, and the poor fought every day just to survive. Amid all this chaos, one man revealed it all with his brush. He was not just a painter, he was the mirror of English society. His name was William Hogarth, and he wielded his brush like a weapon, exposing corruption, immorality, and hypocrisy. In today's video, we will dive into the secret world of Hogarth, the master of satire and the father of caricature. Fact 1. Birth and early life. William Hogarth was born on November 10, 1697, in the Bartholomew Close area of London. At that time, London was a sprawling city, but its streets were narrow, dirty, and filled with poverty and disease. He was born into a simple middle-class family. His father, Richard Hogarth, was a professional teacher with a deep interest in classical languages, especially Latin, and he hoped his son would grow up to be an educated man. Richard dreamed of success in education, but reality was not kind. His mother, Anne Gibbons Hogarth, was a humble and resilient woman who tried to protect her children amid the family's hardships. However, when Richard ended up in debtor's prison, the family plunged into deep poverty. Young William experienced the harsh realities of scarcity and struggle from an early age, shaping the keen observational skills that would later define his art. Fact 2. His father's imprisonment. One of the most defining moments in William Hogarth's life was the tragedy of his father. Richard Hogarth once launched a project called the Latin School Dining Hall. The idea was unusual. Students were supposed to speak only in Latin while having their daily meals. The project was intended both as an educational experiment and a small business venture. However, it failed miserably. Nobody showed interest, and Richard soon found himself buried under enormous debts. As a result, he was sent to Fleet Prison, a notorious debtor's prison in London. At that time, such prisons were infamous. If you couldn't pay your debts, you could remain locked up for years. But imprisonment wasn't the only consequence. The family's entire social life and stability crumbled along with him. Young William witnessed his father living among books, but trapped in poverty and obscurity. This image left a lasting impression on him. From an early age, he understood that idealism often crashes against the harsh walls of reality. Perhaps this is why, later in life, Hogarth's brush so ruthlessly exposed a society filled with false aristocracy, hollow values, and greed for money. The bitter smile in Hogarth's art was, in many ways, a reflection of his father's own life. Fact 3. Youth and early steps in art. After his father's imprisonment, the family's hardships didn't end, and young William had to take on responsibilities early in life. He had a passion for art, but it was more than just a hobby. It was also a way out of his difficult circumstances. The young Hogarth first worked as an apprentice to a silver engraver. At the time, engraving on silver was both decorative and practical, used for plates, ornaments, and even calling cards. William learned to carve intricate details and work with symbols. However, he soon realized that this craft alone could not express the depth of his inner world. In his free time, he sketched the people of London in his notebook. Women arguing at the market, drunken sailors, aristocratic carriages, and street children. These sketches became, in a way, his school of life. He observed every layer of society carefully and recorded it with his brush. All of these experiences paved the way for Hogarth not just to become a painter, but a master of social satire. His brush soon went beyond ordinary portraiture. It began to reveal the flaws, vices, and hypocrisies of people in society. Fact 4. First major success, A Harlot's Progress. The work that made William Hogarth a household name in London was his 1732 series, A Harlot's Progress. This series consisted of 6 paintings, telling the story of a young, innocent girl who moves from the countryside to London. At first, she appears as a charming young woman, but she is soon drawn into prostitution, contracts diseases, and ultimately dies young and impoverished. This work was more than just art. It was a harsh mirror of society. Hogarth showed how quickly the lives of vulnerable people in the city could be destroyed. The characters he painted offered viewers not only entertainment, but also a lesson about the consequences of social neglect and moral corruption. A Harlot's Progress became so famous that its engraved reproductions quickly spread throughout London. People followed the story as if reading a book, fully grasping Hogarth's satirical message. This work elevated him from an ordinary painter to the conscience of the nation. Fact 5. A Rake's Progress: The Tragedy of Bad Habits. Hogarth's next major success came in 1735 with the series A Rake's Progress. This set of 8 paintings told the story of a young heir who lives a wasteful and immoral life. The protagonist, Tom Rakewell, inherits a large fortune but fails to use it wisely. He becomes addicted to luxurious pleasures, drunkenness, and women. Through this story, Hogarth demonstrated how the careless use of wealth can lead to one's downfall. As the series progresses, Tom's life deteriorates. He loses his money, alienates his friends and lover, and eventually ends up in a mental asylum. Hogarth's brush did more than just depict a story. It offered a moral lesson. Actions have inevitable consequences. Fact 6. Religious views and their influence. William Hogarth lived in the complex, socially turbulent environment of London, and his religious beliefs deeply influenced his work. Hogarth was a Protestant, and he often used religious ideas to criticize morality, ethics, and society. He believed that human wrongdoing was not only caused by social circumstances, but also by moral weakness and corruption. For this reason, in series like A Harlot's Progress and A Rake's Progress, he emphasized themes of sin and punishment. For example, the misfortunes of the prostitute or Tom Rakewell are portrayed not just as social consequences, but also as the results of sinful choices. Hogarth also used religious symbols in satire. Churches, priests, or objects of worship often appeared in his works to reveal society's double standards. This approach allowed him to create a blend of social and moral satire, entertaining viewers while also making them reflect deeply. Fact 7. Recognized as a master of satire. William Hogarth was not just a painter, he was a mirror of society and a master of satire. His works were entertaining, yet they carried serious social criticism. Hogarth depicted everything with a sharp and relentless eye, from the false behaviors of the aristocracy to the lives of the urban poor and the scenes of city streets. For example, in the series Marriage à la Mode, he criticized the superficial and self-serving lives of aristocrats through arranged marriages built on money. In the 4 Stages of Cruelty, he showed how humans can develop cruelty and violence from childhood, ultimately leading to disastrous consequences. Hogarth's style of satire was both humorous and thought-provoking. While making people laugh, he also forced them to question their own morality and the flaws of society. Every character he painted was more than just an image. It was a lesson in ethics and social awareness. Fact 8. Engravings and wide distribution of his works. William Hogarth's work was not limited to paintings. He also discovered the power of reaching a large audience through engravings. In the 18th century, engravings were the most popular method of reproducing art, and Hogarth mastered this technique. People would hang these works in their homes and follow the stories as if reading a book, fully understanding Hogarth's satirical messages. This way, he captured the attention not only of the wealthy aristocrats, but also of the middle class and the poor. Engravings also became a source of income for him. Each print was produced in limited numbers and sold, providing Hogarth with financial independence. This allowed him to expand his social and artistic impact while maintaining his freedom as an artist. Hogarth's technique made him both a messenger of social change and a commercially successful artist, bridging art with moral and societal lessons. Fact 9. Social themes and critique of justice. William Hogarth did not limit himself to portraits or everyday life scenes. He openly exposed the injustices and social problems of English society in his works. For example, one of his famous series, The 4 Stages of Cruelty, depicts how humans develop cruelty from childhood. Young children are shown being cruel to animals and each other, and as they grow, they spiral into criminal behavior, ultimately facing punishment. Through these works, Hogarth highlighted problems that society often ignored. He also criticized the court and legal system, the unfair advantages of the rich, the injustices faced by the poor, and corruption were all laid bare in his paintings. Hogarth's art forced viewers to reflect on social justice and morality. Ultimately, Hogarth's work was more than just beautiful art. It was a powerful tool carrying social messages and moral lessons. Fact 10. Death and legacy in English art. William Hogarth passed away on October 26, 1764, in London. His life was a unique journey, from humble beginnings to becoming a master of social satire. Throughout his life, he was recognized not just as a painter, but as a mirror of public conscience and a moral instructor. Hogarth's work marked a turning point in English art. Thanks to him, a national style and social realism came to the forefront, at a time when England mostly imitated Italian and French styles. His legacy is measured not just in paintings. His brush was filled with humor and lessons, allowing everyone to see a piece of their own life in his work. For this reason, Hogarth remains known as the father of modern caricature and social satire. William Hogarth did more than paint with brush and color. He painted the conscience of society, revealing human moral failings and social injustice. His works remind us that a mirror reflects not only our faces, but also our souls. From the streets of 18th century London, this simple boy left an eternal mark on world art and social awareness. With a brush full of laughter and lessons, Hogarth still tells us, every action has consequences, and art has the power to show them. If you enjoy stories like this and want to explore more fascinating historical tales, subscribe to our channel and continue discovering our rich historical world.